So I see we have Violet, Victoria, Mia. I know who this person is from Indonesia. They, them. Hi, Violet. They, them. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good actually.
Okay. It says the soul must exist because we know rationality and knowledge exist. What's the bridge there? How do we? I don't quite get the bridge.
Yeah, all right. I'm gonna actually explain this one. So, as a former atheist, I was very deep into naturalism as my worldview, and I thought that naturalism was true. And I also thought that the immaterial human soul does not exist because of it. Now, I just begun to realize that if the soul does not exist, then libertarian free will cannot exist. And if libertarian free will cannot exist, then both rationality and knowledge do not exist. But that is problematic because we know that rationality and knowledge are self-evident and they do exist. And here is the reasoning. The process of rationality leading to warranted or justified knowledge must be with it, the properties of being able to think of and about competing hypotheses. We have to be deliberate with that, the ability to infer freely and affirm the best explanation via the laws of logic. Therefore, a rational entity must possess at least two attributes: intentionality and libertarian free will. And if we're just cows to have these thoughts, if these thoughts are purely predetermined, then how do you know? How can anyone claim that their determined thought is any good, let alone true? All they can do is presuppose that what they happen to think, that what they are caused to think, is correct. But this is not a good argument. It does not qualify as
Wait, it said our call screener wrote down that you said the soul must exist because we know rationality and knowledge exist. So you just explained all that stuff about rationality and knowledge, but how do we get from there to the soul being existing? What's the leap from one to the other? That's what I'm interested in. Hello, Violet?
It got very quiet.
I guess we lost him. I'm going to send them back to the queue maybe.
Yeah, hopefully they call back in.
Pick it back up.
I think it's interesting that their argument starts off with that it prerequisites libertarian free will. So I think that's one thing we could back up to, is that they're obviously presupposing that we do have libertarian free will. So without that assumption, we can't jump to the second point, which is leads to the third point. So I would be curious to go back to that, but also I want to hear the answer to your question: is how do you get from the rationality and knowledge exist? How does that jump to having a soul?
Yeah,
because that's obviously the point they're trying to make.
You know what? We have a super chat since we're right here. It's from Ben 9 Lives for $9.99. Walk once a week through Paw Paw Tunnel, 3,118 feet in total darkness with a flashlight in search of Mothman, a West Virginia legend. That would be kind of cool. I would be up for that. I don't believe in Mothman, but I would walk through the tunnel. I've been down into a lot of old mines throughout my life, and I love doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, I would get into that.
I don't know if I'd go through a mine. Like, that'd be scary. Tunnels. Yeah, we've got a lot of cool tunnels around where I live too, of course, I don't believe anything's gonna pop out at me, but it is funny how you get that butterfly feeling in your stomach that something's behind you when you can't see anything. So
okay, we got Violet back, so we're gonna bring them on. Violet, they, them. Hi, Violet.
Yeah. I would like to continue where I left off. So basically, how do I make the bridge between knowing that rationality and knowledge exists to there has to be a soul that exists to support this too? So I would say it's a pretty simple explanation. The process of rationality, right? The process of getting to a knowledge, getting to know the right things in this world, it entails that there must exist a property of the rational agent, that it must be free, it must be able to infer, affirm, compare different evidences in a free manner, you know. And if you are if you just happen to,
but how does it? But
things,
why? I get what you're saying. Okay, I understand that. But how does that get us to a soul? Because what you just described sounded to me like using your brain, not a soul at all.
Well, yeah, if you're using your brain, then that would be naturalism. It would be, if we have only our brain to do so, then technically we don't have this free agency that I talked about earlier, which I have established to be necessary in order for.
Why don't we have free agency?
The brain cannot give us free agency. It is a chemical process and will only give us one single result that is dependent on our chemical process.
So you're saying that all. So are you? Let me get, please hold on, because this is really confusing to me. I'm hoping you can clarify this. So what you're saying is that any thought that my brain makes isn't a free thought?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Okay, so whose thought is it then? Who's causing me to do that?
Well, yeah, okay. You can say that it is your thought, but like I said, you do not have full control of it, or maybe you do not have.
Why are you assuming I don't have full control of it? This is what I'm trying to get to. You've said that 3 times now, and I don't understand why you don't think I have control of my brain.
Well, because the brain controls us, right? You need a soul.
I'll agree it has autonomic responses, like to keep our heart and our lungs going. That doesn't mean that we don't have free thought, though.
Yeah, but ultimately, the thought we end up having would be the product of the chemical process and the synapses firing in our brain. Though it is a very procedural and depending on
I thought it was fairer to say that when we have the thought, the chemicals are exuded, not the other way around.
Well,
do you understand?
My question.
Go ahead, Erin. Go ahead.
Well, okay, I've got a few things like here. My first question is that: do you believe that rationality and knowledge cannot exist, or cannot exist if we don't have free will, or that is there some sort of incongruency between having rationality and knowledge with naturalism? What is the incongruence there? Pardon?
I would say free will is absolutely necessary if we can have rationality and knowledge, which we know both exist, because, like I said earlier, the process.
But why can't we have? Why can't we?
Free agent.
Why can't we be rational and still have predetermined, like under naturalism? Why can't our brain that has evolved over millennia to pattern seek and all these other things? Why can't it come to rational conclusions anyway?
Well, it may come to rational conclusions sometimes, right? Because we're not don't have any full control over it. We can only presuppose that what we happen to think.
And I think that we see that all the time. That people often come to conclusions that are accurate, and sometimes they don't. I think that kind of aids in the support of the fact that our brains have flaws, and that we have a lot of pattern seeking and we have a lot of influence from our environment, but it's not always right. I feel like under your argument that if we had libertarian free will and we have knowledge and rationality, that we would come to the right conclusion 100% of the time. And if not, then why? If based on your definition of how things work, why do people mess up still? Why do people have incorrect conclusions then?
Well, that's funny because I'm pretty sure I've explained that to you, because we depend entirely on. Oh, hang on. Well, here's the point I'm trying to make, right? You may happen to get to the right stuff in a no free will world, but you cannot have full control over it. That's all the point I'm trying to say, really.
Yeah, and so I get that. It's that's a tough thing to deal with, that we might make mistakes because we have these mammalian brains that have a lot of influence that are maybe outside of our control. So I'd have to go back to your first point in your syllogism here, is you're presupposing libertarian free will. And my question would be, what is the difference between true libertarian free will and the illusion of such? What is the difference there? And how do you know that?
I have another problem too. If you're saying that we can't trust our thoughts, right, because they're being influenced by other things, where did you get this whole thought about the soul? Wouldn't that possibly be wrong too, because you're not in control of your thoughts about the soul?
Yeah, well, that's not the philosophical school of thought that I'm coming from, so I do not have to worry about that. And I think it's the naturalist.
Oh, come on.
That's nice.
Come on now. Here's a whole idea for you, and you're just going to toss it out because it doesn't fit your narrative? Is that what you're going to do?
See, when you're coming from a presupposition, we can continue to have this philosophical debate, but when you're coming from a presupposition like that, you need to first convince us of the presupposition, and you're not doing so great in that area. You're just asserting that. So,
right, all right.
I don't know where to go from there.
And I ask you, do you think that rationality and knowledge, as I've just described, a process that requires a free agency, do you believe that the two exist?
That rationality and knowledge. Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Do you believe that rationality and knowledge exist?
Yeah.
Sure.
I believe they absolutely can.
Yeah. Yeah, and how would you describe rationality? Is it not the process of arriving to the right conclusion because you are free?
No, not at all. People can not at all. People can rationalize bad conclusions all the time. People do it
and
all
they do.
the time. Right? Just because you can rationalize something does not mean that something is correct.
And I don't see how a soul further strengthens that idea either, that if I can come to a rational conclusion using my own, natural processes, naturalistic processes, nothing external to me, I don't see how that is any of why your argument that there's something external to me that's causing my rationality to work, why that's any stronger of an argument. I still don't see the problem here. I think that rationality and knowledge can exist, and we have lots of reasons or lots of ways that we can check our rationality, and we can compare it, and this is why we have all the different methods that we have to make sure we come to the correct answers, because our brains are imperfect, because they're natural. So I think you're just describing brain functions, and there's nothing spooky about it, nothing that's external or requiring of this ethereal soul thing that's outside of us. Everything that you're explaining sounds like exactly what we have. We've got brains, they've got pattern behaviors, they can acquire different methods and to get to the conclusion of something, and that often does end with a rational and a conclusion that has knowledge in it, but it's not always the case, and we see that every single day, which makes sense to me.
Yeah, that's all part of the natural world. I don't know why we need to make this extra leap to a soul that we can't prove it actually exists. So, and that's what I'm still asking for, is how did you get from rational and knowledge to a soul? I don't understand the connection there. I don't see a bridge at all.
Maybe we could even go to. I have one, maybe another follow-up to that would be like, what are you describing is a soul? What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I'm just trying to use the soul here because it is so far the best explanation, if there is such a thing as libertarian free will, which in my thinking has to exist because rationality and knowledge exist. Because I don't see a reason, I don't see any explanation that the natural world can give us libertarian free will. So it has to come from an immaterial source, and that's
so maybe
the best explanation for it would be the soul.
That's fine. So what if libertarian free will doesn't exist? I can disagree with you on that.
And what if libertarian free will exists outside without a soul? I don't understand why it has to have a soul attached to it. That's what I'm asking for. Make that bridge for us. As you know, as my good friend, fellow nonprofit and math teacher Scott Dickey would say, show us your work.
The libertarian free will, right? It encompasses a free agency that we can act freely off external influences. And if you're just relying on a natural,
wouldn't that be our brain?
Chemically happening. That's
okay.
Exactly
so why? So how does that prove a soul?
Like I said, if you rely on the brain solely, then you do not have a free agency. You do not have rationality and knowledge.
Wait.
Two different things. I feel like those are two.
Wait, please stop. That is not answering my question. My question is, and it's what you called in about, according to the call screener, that rationality and knowledge proves that there is a soul. Now, there was nothing about free will in that. I don't even know why free will proves that. I just don't get it. You're not making any sense here. And I'm asking you again, can you please show us this connection that you're claiming is there? You just keep saying it's there, but you're not explaining why. Please explain why.
Well, can you have any other cause of libertarian free will other than the soul? Can you have it from, let's say, the material world alone? I don't think so. There is no way you can have free will.
Why don't you think so? Why do you think it's impossible? Why do you think that's impossible?
Because if it's just naturalistic factors at play, if it's just the brain and all that, then it would be no different from the working of a clock. It would be mechanical. There will only be one conclusion.
Why are you are equating the autonomous actions of the brain, like keeping our heart beating and our lungs working, with using our brain to make thoughts and to figure things out. And those are two completely different functions of the brain. Our thoughts and the way we figure things out, and when we think about future problems or experiences, that is not on an automatic response system like the heart beating is. I don't understand why you think those two are the same thing. Can you maybe explain that to me? And maybe we can go a little bit farther, because I don't think that's the way the brain works, the way you're describing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it can work that way, but it doesn't work that way with our thought.
Yeah, you say that there is a distinction to be made between the autonomous process in our brain and the more personal parts of our brain. Well, I would say that in the grand scheme of things, if you have a watch and everything is working according to the mechanism of that watch, then it doesn't matter what it is. It will be the same thing, in my opinion. And what you said earlier about our thoughts, our actions, our future planning, they are all the external factors I talk about.
Yes, and Violet, you're making a comparison. Yes, there are some things in our brain that, when everything's set up properly, they do function on their own, and it hopefully it keeps going on its own, similar to how a watch or a clock would work. I mean, like Kelley had said, like we hope that our brain functions in a way that it continues to keep our heart beating and controls our sympathetic nervous system and all of that. But there's this other part of our brain that we possess that a clock or a watch does not possess. It's our prefrontal cortex, and the part that does all the complicated interactions between our influence of our environment, plus our own personality, the way our brain grows and all of that. And that's what we perceive as our thought process and our free will. Now, I'm not going to maybe go down that route with you, but I feel like you're making a false equation here, that it's one or the other. The cool thing about our brain is that it can be both. There's parts that function on their own. There's parts that are, for all intents and purposes, seem to be free for our own our own controlling, and there's probably this really weird nuanced connection between both. There's things that are going to function somewhat on their own and somewhat kind of to our instigating. So I think you're making a false illusion. It's not, or a false equation. It's not just one or the other. It's much more complicated than that.
I was thinking too, if our thoughts are just a process of our brain working, that we don't have any free will of our thoughts, then wouldn't everybody think exactly the same, just like our hearts beat exactly the same, just like our lungs work exactly the same? Wouldn't our thoughts be exactly the same if it's just purely mechanical?
And we would come to the same conclusions all the time, right? We come to the same conclusions. We would have the most rational response at all times. If we were to assume your whole argument, Violet, then why is there any disagreements amongst humans? Because if we have this libertarian free will and we have this function outside of us, then why do we have arguments about things? Why do we come to different conclusions? Why are we not all coming to the same answer all the time if we have this rationality to us?
Right, because all it takes is a very slight difference in the chemical or the neuron structure in our brain to have completely different personalities. I mean, are you also?
But why is it different? Why is it different? Do you think people develop differently based on their environments and their DNA from that they get on this from their parents and these things that are kind of set up almost like a clock?
Yeah. I want to stop for a second too. I granted we all have different personalities, but that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We're talking about thoughts, not personalities, thoughts. And you were saying that our thoughts are created because of chemical responses in the brain, and that's it. There's no free will there. And if that is true, then everybody's thoughts, not personalities, would be the same. Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand what I'm saying, but I would say thoughts and personalities exist in kind of the same realm. I'm sorry if it's some oversimplification, but to argue that different chemical processes, different structures in the brain cannot produce any different result, that is false. I mean, I'm Asian and you both are American and we don't look alike visually speaking, right? So even going by
we're not talking about that. We're talking about your heart beats because your brain tells it to beat. My heart beats because my brain tells it to beat. That's an autonomic mechanical response that our brain is monitoring. And the way you are describing thoughts is that the thoughts are being done the same way. Do you understand that? That's the way you've described it so far. So if that is true, then we should all have the same thoughts. And I don't know where you get the idea that we have different chemicals because you're Asian and I'm an American, because we are still both human beings and we still have the same chemicals.
I'm not even American.
All right. Well, okay. I did not anticipate it to go down this route, but I'm not going to say I was not prepared to defend my position there, but it seems to me that you're both very happy to acknowledge there exists some kind of free will in a naturalistic worldview.
Yeah, we have free thought. We have free thought in our brain. There's no need to add something that we don't know about or cannot prove onto something that we already know fits the purpose of what you're talking about. We already know the brain can do this. We've tested it. You can go read scientific articles. We know the brain can do these things, that we can have these free thoughts. Now, I don't know why you think you need a soul to reproduce the same thing the brain is doing. That's what we're trying to figure out. Why is the soul needed to be tacked onto this? And why did your thoughts that we all have, all of our free thoughts, why are they proof that the soul exists?
Right. I guess I can ask you a question then. Do you believe that these free thoughts...
I would rather you answer mine. I've asked it like 6 times and you still haven't answered it.
It feels like we're kind of going around and around here. And
you know what? I just want to say, Mia, you know, when you told me that you wanted to let me brush up on what you were going to do, I think maybe you should have been the one doing the brushing up.
Oh, really? You're gonna play that now? No.
Yeah, I am going to play that now because you keep doing that to me over and over and over, and every time you've called in, you have not put up a good argument. I'm sorry, but you haven't.
Yeah. This is my first time hearing the argument, and I'm pretty unconvinced. And I didn't want to interject, but I will again that I don't believe that there is necessarily libertarian free will. So you've consistently throughout this whole argument continued to assume that I have the same position as you, which I don't, and you failed to convince me as well. And so until you can convince me that there is something different about the way that you're something between the illusion of free will and the actual existence of free will, then this is not going to go very far. So I don't know. It was nice chatting with you, but I don't think we're getting very far.
Yeah, right. So what I'm going to say is, if you do not believe free will to exist, if you do not believe the necessariness of the soul, then I would say you have no right to intellectually claim that there is such thing as rationality and knowledge, and thus you have no right to have any intellectual.
I have every right to just claim whatever I want, just like you do. Don't tell me I don't have the right to express my own ideas. That's just wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't tell you didn't have the right to express yours.
And I didn't disagree that there is the illusion of free will and that we have to presuppose some level of accountability for the way that we think. I think that the things that we're talking about, the brain processes, are complex enough that it can give us the illusion that we have some aspect of free will.
Right. Do you want to hear what I was supposed to say when, at the end of the syllogism?
No, I wanted to
Not
hear
really.
the answer to the question.
I would like to hear you answer Kelley's question, and that's
the question that was supposedly called in about how knowledge and rationality gets us to a soul. Well, I don't understand the connection, and you still haven't shown us.
Right. Well, what you're saying, all of those free thought that are distinct from the autonomous response, I'm going to tell you, if you go by your naturalistic worldview, you seem to be, then what those are mere illusions, and then you agree implicitly that
you prove wait, stop. All you're doing is making more claims. You're not proving anything. You're just what you think is all just an illusion. You've said that to us 6 times now. But you still haven't proven it or made the connection to a soul. You just keep saying the same thing over and over that doesn't explain the question.
Right. But it seems like we are trained to argue differently here.
Yeah, because you're coming from
I'm
a
asking
presupposition.
you to explain stuff. If you're going to make a claim, you're going to say this is the way it is. Then you have to explain why it is that way.
Right. So, I'm just going to ask you one question. All right. If all of those chemical processes in the brain, then how can you say it's not an illusion? I mean, those are external facts.
We're not.
I never
said that. I've said the opposite several times. I've never said that. Maybe it is an illusion. I'm okay with that. I can live with that. You're the one that has a problem with it.
Neither one of us made any claim except that the brain has an autonomous function, or functions on it automatically at some point. I don't think we've made any other claims. That and the fact that we appear to have free thoughts. Other than that, I don't think anybody's made a claim here except you saying that rationality and knowledge proves there's a soul.
Yeah, well, if she has no problem with accepting that the free thought that we can produce is actually just a mere illusion, then she will have a problem in her.
Wait, no, she didn't say that. She said it could be. It could be. It could be.
Well, right. Well, I like to lie a little bit,
Because nobody has proven it one way or the other.
Well, look.
I'm not going to be able to convince you in this live performance, but I'm going to say to all that is watching right now that the libertarian free will exists, and the soul is the best explanation for libertarian free will.
Why? Why is it the best explanation? You just did it again. You just claimed it again, and you still haven't explained why it's the best explanation. Why?
Aliens is the best explanation.
Hey, there you go. Aliens did it.
And I'm just going to make that claim, but I'm not going to explain it. It just is the best explanation. So I feel like we ended on similar notes here.
It must be.
Yeah. I'm just going to get this over with. I'm going to say to the viewer, just to get them to think about the possibility in the future that with the existence of the soul, we must know that the best explanation for the soul would be the existence of God.
I don't understand that at all. Again, you can't.
I don't even know what a soul is.
Things like that.
We also never even covered
I don't even know that there is such a thing as a soul.
Yeah. But I don't think we should run down that rabbit trail today.
There has to be a soul. Like you said, it can only be an illusion.
You're just being incredulous at this point. There doesn't have to be anything. There doesn't have to be free will. There doesn't have to be a soul. There doesn't have to be a God. You have to show your work.
Well, I think it's pretty clear. I mean, the process of rationality entails the property of having to be able to be a free agent, to think and rise to a good conclusion.
And how does that get us to a soul? You keep saying that as if that's an explanation. That doesn't explain anything about a soul. It explains absolutely nothing about a soul.
It is an explanation because without the existence of a soul, you cannot have libertarian free will. Without having libertarian free will,
Why?
You cannot be a free man.
Why?
And what is the soul? What if I just if I describe my soul as just my brain, then you can't have rationality without a soul. If I'm going to describe a soul as my brain, what are you talking about?
Okay.
Something external to us?
Definition of the soul. Okay.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Right. Ask me about the definition of the soul. Okay, I'll give you. What is the difference between the brain and the soul? The brain acts like a very complicated computer, right? Like a complicated computer, it is a very mechanical thing. But the soul is free. The soul is us. All right? That is your distinction. The soul is not bound down to any formulaic. All right? It is not bound down to any formula. That is why rationality needs a soul, because rationality is a free process.
No, that doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
No, and we've just explained this already. That we just talked about how the brain is more than just this.
And what you just did is you just told us what you think some of the attributes of a soul is, but you still didn't really tell us what a soul is.
It's that
you were like, a soul does this.
He's describing all the non-automatic parts of our brain, which we've already talked about too, and we have already attributed that to the other parts of our brain that is more complicated and more nuanced than that, and has a complex relationship between what's happening and our current, the way that your brain works and how you make decisions and your influence and all the other things that give the illusion, in my opinion, of free will. And on a time, a moment by moment basis, that is the fast working part of our brain that is complex and not automatic.
Right. But you dismiss the existence of the soul. You dismiss my definition of it as if these are nonsense that I came up with last night. But these are recognized principles in philosophy, the soul, the free will.
I don't care.
Things.
I don't care if it's been written about by dudes in books for the last 5,000 years if you can't show your work now. So, I mean, I know a lot of people, worship at the altar of philosophy. I don't.
People have been writing about dragons for that long. Do you believe in dragons?
Yeah. But just to say, brother, gravity, there is a law to that. And what I mean by this is I'm highlighting the strictness of naturalism. You throw something in a place with gravity, it goes to the ground. All right? there is no way that cup or the thing you just throw can have any way to counteract that. And your chemicals in your brain is exactly like the laws of gravity affecting you.
Nope.
If you say there is
No, we already went through this, because
Yeah,
if that was true, we would all have the same thoughts all the time. We've already been through this.
Yeah,
We've
I'm done
already
with
been
this
through this,
conversation.
Victoria.
Right. Well, I would say that is all the argument I can have, my brother. I can tell you, I can say to the
Yeah,
people,
but that it wasn't really an argument.
is good.
I'm sorry, Mia. It wasn't even really an argument, because it didn't prove anything.
You know,
It was just
There was a syllogism, and we broke it apart and told you the parts that we disagreed on in the first 2 minutes, and then we just went around in circles for the last 30 minutes.
Yeah. So
come back and prove your first point.
I'm gonna give you a chance to try to clean up your argument again. I'm sure I'll see you online. I usually do. So try to clean it up and see if you can get to something better than what you had there, though.